All right, just to reset, we are um, here today to hear from John Nelson, the owner and operator of Apostille Training, and I'm sorry I'm butchering it up, but he is talking with us about how we can add Apostille services to our existing notary businesses. So John, you say that now you want to get into the actual different types of legalization services. If you would continue.
Thank you. We're going to concentrate on the state legalization process because that's the simplest one. And that's the process that probably for those of you who are just starting have been able to execute, but the principles are the same. But let me start by giving you a little bit of knowledge that I think is important. The word apostille is a French word. It's like apostille. It's apostille. The word means certification or signature. In America, we have trouble because we're used to having the word what? Apostle. The Apostle Paul, the Apostle John. So we try to pronounce it in that same way, but it is an apostille. Now, when people are requesting an apostille, everyone does not need an apostille. That's just a generic term that they use. For example, in the state of California, whether you are a Hague or non-Hague country, and I'll talk about that a little later on, California only issues the apostille legalization. They do not have an authentication or certification. So any legalization done in the state of California, it's an apostille. But that's not true every place else. California is the only place that I'm aware of that is that way.
Hey, John, if you would, I accidentally muted you. If you can unmute, we didn't miss much. I beg your pardon.
Okay, you know about where I dropped so I can know roughly?
Good.
I'm good? Okay, okay. Like I said, California only issues an apostille. In other states, that's not true. You have what is called an apostille, you have an authentication, and in certain states, certification. And I'm telling you this because depending upon what state you're in, you would be familiar with that term. There are certain things though about the apostille that I want you to know. At the federal level, an apostille can be and is only issued on a federal document at the federal level. Okay. Now we'll explain that where it makes a little bit more sense to you further down. And at the federal level, that document must be going to a Hague country. We'll explain that too, but keep that in your mind. Now, authentication differs from state to state. At the federal level, authentication is for a document that's headed to a non-Hague country. Some states may use the term certification instead. Now, both of these types of legalization, the apostille, as well as the certification, or legalization steps. So you could define legalization as the process of obtaining an apostille or authentication on a document that is outbound USA. Keep that in mind. What we are talking about here are documents leaving the USA, not documents inbound. It's very important that you understand that. When people are sending documents to another country, then yes,
Hey,
we do
John,
that.
if
Yes.
could we also add, not only are they documents, they are notarized documents that need to leave the United States. Would you
Very
agree?
true.
All
Very
right.
true. Yes, you're almost the only documents that may not be notarized are some federal, but every other document that you are going to send through the legalization process, yes, It definitely requires notarization, which opens up what? A big opportunity for notaries if they are aware of that.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted you to look at, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, I've used this certified vital statistic document. I'm going to let you do it, Michelle, because I had set it up, but I trust you more than I trust myself.
All right. And Phyllis, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say, while Michelle is setting that up, that, like John said, the vital statistic documents, so those have to be the original certified copies. You have your birth certificates, your death certificates, your divorce decrees. Those have to be. So those are not you're not necessarily going to notarize those. Those are going to be certified copies, and your FBI background check. So if you have a lot of people that need notarized, need authenticated documents because they actually live overseas, going to get married overseas, or for whatever reason abroad. A lot of them want to get residency abroad. And so in that case, you'll get a lot of FBI background checks that again are not going to require notarizations, but they're also not going to be able to be authenticated locally either because they're a federal document. So I run into a lot of those too.
All right. And John, did you want me to go to your training site? Is that what you asked me to set up?
Yes, go to page, I think it's on page 26, there's a diagram there. And I just want to, it's sort of a picture of what takes place in the vital statistic documents. And I want everyone to take a quick look at that, because there are certain steps that we go through. And these steps basically don't change regardless of what type of document you are taking through the legalization process. I'm sorry, Michelle, go to the training manual. Can you open the training manual? If not, hang on, I think I can.
John, do I need to log in to go to your manual or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you are there.
Complete that now. Thank you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And what Michelle is going through, this is the process that the students use when they're getting to the training materials. Okay. I go to page 26, that's the first major diagram. Okay, here we are. Now, let's just take a careful look at this, because, and this is only just focusing on the state legalization process. There is a big variation when we get to federal, but I just wanted us to look at the state legalization process. And what I used here in this example, this is in the training manual, is a vital statistic document. It could be a birth document, it could be a death certificate, whatever the case is. But this is what would happen. Now, also in this flow diagram, when some of you would have translations, because certain people want to have a translation that's going to be sent. So here's the way the process starts. If you stick to the process, we've got this fine-tuned, you'll always know what to do and you'll do it correctly. If you start jumping, then it doesn't work quite well. The first thing you're going to do with every document when you're processing them, you're going to find out from the person the country of destination. I don't care what type of document it is. The first thing you want to know is just exactly where is this document going to end up? Where are we processing it to do it? Now, when you do that, the document, you're starting like from the 10,000 foot view, okay? Then they give you the country. When they give you the determination of where it's going to go, it's going to fall in one of two categories. It's going to fall either in a Hague country or non-Hague country. You say, what does it mean, Hague country and non-Hague country? Okay, on October 5th, 1961, there was a convention in Hague, some people pronounce it Hague, to try to simplify the legalization process between countries. Before then, this was a very expensive process. You had to have lawyers on both ends, and you still had no way of knowing whether that was a legitimate chain of signatures. So at this convention, for the members, they said, okay, if we send a document from, let's say from the USA, and it's going to Russia, and if it is legalized with the apostille, then we know that that document has gone through the right chain of signatures and it can be accepted in Russia without any further steps. That's a pretty big deal. So if the document's going to go Hague or non-Hague, there are some other things that take place, but we're not going to deal with that for right now. Once you have determined the type of legalization that's needed, you can see there are different steps on the diagram that you can go to. Now, certain states will require that your birth certificates be legalized by the county before anything can happen to them, and certain states do not. One state that is rather complex is New York State. If you're born in the boroughs, it's a kind of a complicated process as to how the initial steps that they require to take place. But anyway, the vital statistic, let's go on the left side of the diagram. Most of the time, optionally, you may need a counter certification, and then your document will go to your Secretary of State. Now, let me point out why that takes place. Your Secretary of State is only able to authenticate documents of which they have the signatures on file for. If your Secretary of State does not have that particular signature, then something else has to happen to that document before it gets to the Secretary of State. That is why where you see the little dotted lines on the left side, there's sometimes your birth certificates will have to go to the county for certification if the Secretary of State does not have those signatures on file. Case in point, in the state of California, we have two types of birth certificate. One is a certified and one is an informational. The certified birth certificates are signed by the medical doctor, even though he may be a state person, but is signed by a medical doctor. The Secretary of State does not have those signatures on file. So if someone brings one of those documents to me, I first have to get it legalized by the county. Then I can take it to the Secretary of State because the Secretary of State has on file the signatures of the county clerks. If it's a certified copy, still staying on the left side, basically it just goes right to the Secretary of State because the Secretary of State has all of the certified signatures on hand, and that completes that legalization. Now, let's look at the other side. Let's scroll up just a little bit, Michelle, just to the other way. Yeah, no, scroll to the top of this page. Yeah. No, the other way. There we go. Well, we're doing a translation. If you have a translation of a vital statistic document, number one, your Secretary of State is not going to put a direct authentication on a translation. It doesn't happen that way, but you're going to go through the same steps. The country is going to be the same, but the type of legalization needed is going to differ. Basically, if you have a translation, what you do is your translator, which you would have, you can do it yourself if you're qualified. Your translator translate the document. and then generates a statement to the effect that this translation is an accurate rendition of the original document, okay? And your translator's signature is notarized and attached to the translation. Now, with the translation, what happens then, your document then is treated just like a regular document. You are not, that the Secretary of State is not really authenticating the translation, but the Secretary of State is authenticating the translator that you as a notary identify. I hope you followed me there. That's what takes place. And so that would complete the flow of the complete document for a translation. I want you to see the difference. There's a difference between dealing with the actual document and then dealing with a translation. Now, let me briefly make a few statements concerning the other types. I didn't want to get into them because it's a little more depth of detail. But if you can remember these basic steps and approach to all of your legalization, these steps don't change. Where you look for the country of destination and you determine the type, and we go from there to get the legalization process taking place. Now, like Phyllis mentioned earlier, you know, your FBI reports, which are federal documents. If you deal with commercial companies, you will find that they do quite a bit with a document called Certificate to Foreign Country. These are things that they have to do on a regular basis, and there's usually quite a high turn for these documents. Let me just walk you through a process of a federal document and some watch outs and things to be careful for. A federal document must contain certain criteria for it to be legalized. It must have the signature, the position, and the signature, by the way, has to be legible. And the FBI reports, they can't go squiggly. That's not allowed. It has to be a legible signature, the title, and the seal of the agency. So if someone gives you a federal document, you look for these things quickly, because if all of these factors are not there, when your document gets to the U.S. Department of State, it will be rejected. And sometimes, you know, you don't want that to happen. But let's just talk for a second on a federal document. Keep this rule in mind. The state can never, ever authenticate a federal document. You send it to the state, you've wasted your time. They're just going to send you a rejection letter and send it back to you. You'll be surprised at how many people are trying this for the first time. They think everything goes to the state. They don't understand that there's a difference in the different types of documents, and it gets to be a sort of embarrassing thing. Your federal documents, the first step that they always will go to is the U.S. Department of State. Right now, that is a lengthy process. Before the pandemic, I was able to turn around documents from the U.S. Department of State roughly in about 7-8 business days. What would you guess it is now? You'd be shocked. Well, to give you an example, I'm just getting returned to me documents that I submitted in November. And here it is March. It's been that type of thing. But let's just go back to where we are. Your federal documents are going to always go first to the U.S. Department of State. The U.S. Department of State will determine where it's going to go due to the country. Now, remember we mentioned earlier, Hague and non-Hague. I told you we'd get back to that. Countries that belong to that convention are called Hague countries. Countries that do not are non-Hague. Now, If it's a federal document and it's going to a Hague country, okay, the U.S. Department of State will attach the apostille to it. If the document is going to a non-Hague, the U.S. Department of State will attach a authentication. That's the difference between the two. And that's why when everyone states that they need an apostille, they don't always need an apostille. They need the document legalized, but what they may actually need is authentication. Now, how am I doing time-wise?
You are doing very good time-wise. This might be a good point, though, for us to pause and allow questions based on what you've covered so far. But if you're in the middle of a thought, John, we'll let you complete that thought.
No, we can stop here because I'm taking them to a different level.
All
in
right.
the next move, yeah.
Give me just a moment, please, to do some technical steps.